For John, for me, I think my comfort, like in regards to going through the process, I'd definitely like to have one meeting where all the chairs, so that all the council members that would be involved would be in one meeting to be able to hear everyone's conversation or input or questions that would be asked, rather than separately, so that I would definitely want to hear from Hapia and the finance committee in regards to some of their considerations are.
Okay. I would just like to acknowledge that Christine's here. So I had taken them through the documents that exist, and the specific the February 9th memo. There were 3 recommendations is where I started, and really I think that the conversation is about, first and foremost, the feedback on the overall approach is minimal in regards to the technical work that's being accepted. In regards to which licenses we would acquire, Council has been signaling that we don't really feel that we have enough information on the value of licenses from an economic or financial perspective, to a point where maybe there should be a recommendation from finance. In addition to that, there's a conversation about we need to figure out where the value lies and how we discuss the where that value comes from to create a budget for the acquisition of licenses. From there, we discussed the potential conversations that we could have in a wider array of committees so that there's a greater understanding of finance, ECDEV, Hapia, to make a recommendation jointly or individually to move forward with something. So there's willingness to do that. But the one thing I wanted to ask is, the deadline for license acquisition is July 2nd, 2021, correct?
That is the current understanding at the Munell Fisheries Committee and of Bob Walking, based on when the decisions were made in the Houseit litigation. This is not necessarily been confirmed or agreed to by Canada. And this is an item that was put in the briefing that Kathy and I were working on last week, where it's a little bit up for interpretation because that process with the Houseit litigants isn't all done and dusted. This is essentially the, I'll call it the worst case scenario, is that this is the timeline that we are on.
Okay.
But it may not be the case.
Okay.
So that would be, if it was, the trigger time for me too, in our view, is July 2nd, 2013. That's what's triggering everything else, correct?
That's the assumption that we're working on to be safe.
To be safe. Okay, that makes sense now.
That may not be the case, but once again, we haven't gotten word back from Canada on that, and it's been a bit frustrating. And now that tool's down federally, so it's even worse.
It's better for us to position in case they're the ones that say, "Oh yeah, the trigger time's now over."
Yeah, and depending on who's in power in a couple of months, that may be a play. So.
Gotcha. And just one more thing, Christine. It's my view that we haven't had any resounding, no way, don't buy any licenses, no, we don't want to do that. I think it's safe to say we're all looking at something that makes good economic sense. We're willing to go down that road. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, and can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I continue? So this document that John's running through now is this one, right? So this is the one that came in. Yeah, so this is the one that council had discussed before the election, and motions were made to advance most of the recommendations in here. And then to this is a lot to go through in this meeting, so I wouldn't attempt it. But this one called Framework for Assessing Seafood Opportunities, this is the one that really gets into helping to answer these questions about what the value of the various license options are that we would receive back, and also what it would cost to purchase them. And also goes into some of the aquaculture tenure stuff that's not connected in with Me Too, but that is an opportunity that the nation has.
So Trevor had brought up a kind of a unified fisheries plan so that it can be all assessed equally, and that's something that we would work together on. I wasn't sure the urgency of making certain decisions though, so we would do it in a stepped approach. But having a plan that kind of fits together aquaculture, fisheries, ground or salmon, all that kind of thing, would be to our benefit, but I think requires feedback from at least finance, AgDev, Havia, if not focus groups with fishermen and so on and so forth.
Right.
So I think I'm going to reiterate what Robert had said. There's no opposition to anything that's written down. It's more, is there a process to make sure that this is communicated so that we can show we're doing the work to do it right when our part of Me Too, of actually getting into a commercialized domestic stuff, is there. So we talked about some of the numbers involved that you took me through, and that their value may be higher to individual fishermen if we have fewer fishermen or more quota and so on and so forth. There's just there's enough process where we don't know how much budget we would be putting forward for the acquisition of licenses yet. And to get there, we probably need feedback from finance, again.
Yeah.
This document actually was a decision, motion, direction given to the Economic Development Officer in regards to the framework for assessing seafood opportunities.
Yes.
For the very reason, when you look at our AgDev Act and our Governance and Fiscal Agreement, was to make sure that whatever we were looking at would meet those, because that's what we're governed by as the Economic Development Act. That's why it's important from the AgDev side when we're looking at fisheries that the plan that we're looking at is almost two-pronged. What we're trying to do as a nation, and what we're trying to do as a business. Terminology is really important because the economics of fisheries doesn't mean it's the economics of our businesses. Very distinct difference that I speak to quite often when we're speaking with fisheries. So it's, that's why I'm asking for when we do the group meeting together. I think that'll help things move along. Because I'm in the same place. I think we do want to acquire licenses, but we just want to figure out how we want to do it.
Who's paying for it and over what amount of time and so on and so forth.
But
The other priorities we may have.
Yeah.
So there have been,
just to finish with that, I am kind of curious. We're currently going down the TFL 44 process of acquiring TFL 44, having a larger percent interest. I'm wondering within fisheries, because we're acquiring more licenses over an area, and you mentioned the ability, if Toquat and others are not interested, do we have opportunity to acquire more?
Yeah, that's.
And in our strategy development, if we had more, does that give us more ability to manage and be able to make things sustainable in a way that we're, because if we're doing it small, it's hard to do anything, but if we're doing it for a larger thing, like we are with TFL 44, gives us better opportunity to actually meet those goals we're trying to meet.
Yeah.
So,
And
just a question too, if there's opportunity there.
it more quota, more licenses increases the flexibility and the overall numbers, and it depends on how you split out. If there's a lot of operating fishermen, and it's split between that, yeah, their share gets bigger the more quota they have, but the initial cost of going in is higher, right? So it's that math, in addition to if you concentrate, and this is what Connie was talking about with a larger vessel or one vessel, is the overhead is lower if you can go out fewer times but catch more things. So there's a financial business case for one, but then it concentrates value in that one thing. And we need to determine what our focus is in regards to the whether or not we want the value to be put to our fishermen, if they want to go out individually, or if we want to concentrate in a few boats and have those fishermen and deckhand stuff work on those boats. And how much does it cost for us to regulate that?
Mhm.
And I don't know the answer to the regulate part because that's negotiated once we get to the starting line.
Mhm.
And that'll be fun. So, is that correct?
Yeah,
Ish?
to
Yeah.
a degree.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how thoroughly you went through this.
I haven't gone through the considerations.
Okay.
yet.
Through this report.
Not with council.
Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't want to jump in and tell you something you've already discussed.
Yeah.
So these are all background and the lead up to this report.
And considerations is the latest one. I was going in order, but yeah.
I did get here in a good time.
Yeah.
So, there's two main sections to this report.
It's the one with the orange title, if you're online. It
So,
says Fisheries Considerations, August 25th.
I just have a question about this. If we're going to be meeting as a group to go through this
Mhm.
and to look at recommendations coming forward to executive council, do we need to be going through that here today?
Mhm.
Because we're gonna be going into the details of this at our group meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Good point.
I think that's what I was saying, it should be just direction to move towards
Yeah.
where we're going to start, going through the process. So wherever you end up starting, that there's going to have to be a recommendation coming.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, the first group that is
Yeah.
finance committee, correct?
Yeah.
There's going to be something that you're going to sit down with so you can develop a recommendation for our consideration.
Yeah.
That'll be the decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just forward that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, well, it's
Great.
okay. I kind of see ECDev
Oh, yeah, negative,
being
yeah.
the group that
Yeah.
could look at other opportunities to see what the value is that they could create outside of what we're doing as a nation.
Yeah.
And it might be indirect stuff, but that could be supplemental and provide further evidence that maybe we should go ahead with this plan over this plan, depending on those kind of arrangements.
Mhm.
So what I'm hearing is that there's an overall kind of general acceptance of the considerations and the framework. We just need to go through the process of having those discussions to determine whether and to what degree we will be acquiring licenses and allotments.
Yeah.
And really, it's just making sure that we are aware of that 2021
Yeah.
kind of deadline.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if we're going to acquire things above a certain value or doing things radically different than what's expected,
Mhm.
we need to talk to the People's Assembly, and that'll likely be the People's Assembly of 2020.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's just your starting point with meetings is
Yeah.
what you're meeting those timelines,
Yeah.
and we work backwards and you make a plan from there.
yeah, and the other reason I wanted to talk about this now is that fisheries items were really important during the election. And they're likely to be brought up at the People's Assembly, so we want to make sure that we're showing a line of work that's been happening dating back to at least February. That's the major document that I'm looking at.
Mhm.
And then all the way to the framework and the considerations document.
Mhm.
What we'll be doing moving ahead is showing what our plan will be in order of licenses and or quota, even more so through anything we negotiate with Monmouth. So from my perspective on the Monmouth side, I'd like to know as soon as possible because it might be in negotiation with Monmouth over acquiring their space. Is there value to that space? Is there
Yeah.
something we can do to accommodate them on forestry side or something? Or monumental cedar, you know, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
The more time we have, the better off we can be.
Mhm.
So I just want to show that we're not doing nothing, but that it's super complicated before we get to the lawyers. So that's just kind of setting expectations.
So today, is there any kind of decision needed from us today?
I am wondering, from the department's perspective, is there anything that would enable that, further enable work, or is working with finance and ECDev and Hopia in the future in now?
I wanted to talk about the timelines a little bit.
Okay.
Because there's a bit of
Great.
a nuance in this where it's not that we need to have our licenses purchased by 2021. In this document, which is the draft briefing to Monmouth decision makers regarding the Me Too provisions in the treaty.
So dated 4th of July.
So this was put together by Bob Bocking for all of the Manauk nations so that they would understand what these various timelines are, and again lays out the difference between the Manauk side or the Me Too side agreement and the Me Too clause in the treaty, because they're each separate things that each have different timelines, and they're all intertwined but don't have to happen at the same time, and they don't both have to happen. One has to do with the negotiations for our ability to split licenses or do other non-standard fisheries in this similar way to the Ahousaht litigants. And the other piece has to do with moving our package of licenses, which is the harvest agreement, into our treaty so that it is that package of licenses constitutionally protected. So there's two different timelines there. And in the back of this document,
What's next steps?
it goes through next steps. And so this is where you get more of the nuance of the timelines, and there's decisions that need to be made, like this meeting that we're talking about all together would need to happen very soon according to these timelines. Because here what's recommended is that no later than October of 2019, each Manauk government should make decisions on whether or not to obtain additional licenses and quota and place them in the harvest agreement with a view to eventually rolling them into the treaty. This step, including the relinquishment process, needs to occur as soon as possible so that the Me Too clause can be triggered by July 2021.
Question on that.
Yeah.
So to make the decision, what's their definition of decision? Is it to the intent, or do you actually, in regards to purchasing additional licenses, what's the?
So the recommendation in that number one is just that the decisions are made of our intention. But in number two, it says here, between October and December 2019, those nations wishing to expand their participation in the harvest agreement should discuss and reach agreement on how to occupy the remaining space. So it's saying first we have internal discussions, and then everyone else is working individually towards being able to have discussions between October and December of this year as Manauk to come to agreement about how we'll make the sharing work. And then it says in January 2020, so right around the corner, we should trigger the Me Too side agreement and start the discussions with DFO on negotiating a fishery similar to what's been extended to the 5 First Nations. And then in June 2021, we should trigger the Me Too clause in the treaty. So the timelines are, they're quite close. And the big things that I was hoping to get an indication of from this report today is whether the Weather Council, and it's okay if this goes to the next meeting, but are folks in agreement with the way that the sharing arrangement has been set up? And this is based on the discussions that happened at the time of treaty signing. It was decided that the value of the licenses would be split amongst the Manauk nations based on population, which is how other allocations are split. So do we agree with what's been advanced here? And then this other discussion that we have talked about deferring about whether or not we would like to acquire additional licenses. So that's the big one out of the first part. And then the second part in here is all about how we use those licenses. And the big thing that I'd like to just get across in this forum is to make sure that there's an understanding that in addition to if we move towards a situation where we're fishing these licenses in a mosquito fleet, not only will it bring less cash right into the nation through the HFN Fisheries LP or otherwise, and put those funds into the pockets of fishers, which I think is the overall goal. It will also take quite a bit in terms of management of that fishery, monitoring of that fishery, additional, and that management is additional staff probably, so it will, there will be costs to the nation. So that's one thing, just to make sure that's, everyone's going in with open eyes to that fact. What's been set out in here in terms of a proposal for how this mosquito fleet could operate. This is a proposal from Stuart Nelson, from Bob Balking, and I've been editing it but not advancing those. This isn't necessarily what it will look like, but this is an option of what it can look like and some of the things that need to be considered. And I think it's important that there's a lot of honesty with our fishers that are really excited about this and about it moving forward, that there is going to be a structure that is somewhat like this that'll be necessary, just so that people are not getting their hopes up about things being one way when there are a number of things that need to be involved. So open and honest.
How is it going to get money into our fishers? Like, how are they going to sell their fish? Who's going to buy it?
So,
I can.
yeah, go ahead.
So it's not entirely understood at this point. There are, the way things are working currently for the Houseit litigants is that there's a process that has to be followed in terms of like any other commercial fishery, where the fishers they have to land their catch at a particular place, have it verified, get a landing slip. So that is all the same as any other large-scale fishery. But then after that, those fishers can sell their fish to anyone who is allowed to buy it. And so any commercial facility can purchase it. And just like is possible with a commercial license holder now, if they get what's called a vendor's license from BC, which actually comes through the health authority, then that allows those fishers to do dockside sales or sales direct to restaurants or so on.
Yeah.
So the full opportunity is there.
And that's the market we're not taking advantage of right now.
Yeah, and the vendor license option is available right now to any of our fishers that has a commercial license.
Yeah.
They can go through that process, and it mostly has to do with upholding a food safe kind of
That's it, yeah.
thing. So that
Sure, and we will give our due attention to it. 8A is government relations. It was going to be presented by Elizabeth. I was thinking deferring it until, Trevor, is there anything you want to put there, or do you want to
Sure.
agreeable to deferring it till when she's available?
Oh, for Elizabeth?
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Okay.
Friday works. I can just add on there just as a kind of preamble to the meetings. I've been working with Kathy on an external communication strategy. So Kathy's been working with Elizabeth Call and Chris Lalande from H&K in Ottawa. So we'll be bringing that forward. It's good.
Perfect.
We also have an election strategy for the federal government too for the next 30 days.
Can I just comment on that? So they've drafted a letter that they're going to send to all of the candidates, and it's basically got 3 questions that HOEA is going to put forward to each candidate, with hopefully getting an answer, and then also being able to put that out on our own media to citizens so that they understand those important issues. So that letter is almost ready to go, and so I'll circulate it to all of Executive Council, and if you just have any questions or comments about it, just email me and we'll get you those answers, and then we can get that out to the leaders.
Oh,
So I think to add to that then, Kathy, I think
Yeah.
one of the things that we should do, Trevor, keep a focus on this, that we should also attend all candidate meetings to to voice the questions at those meetings.
Okay, so I can add to that, and we'll share that by the end of the day. The other thing that we tasked Chris from H&K to do is he's providing us an event list of where
Yeah.
all the MPs are going to be.
Okay.
So we got that one. I think Kathy, I'm looking for a response from Chris, but maybe over lunch if we can get council to look at it.
Sure.
I was just going to move forward with the questionnaire because Robert had a chance to look at it and
Okay.
revised it.
Yeah, I just thought if the rest of executive council maybe has
But
something.
maybe do a
something
printout
like
for council to look
Sure,
at.
do that.
And for fisheries is number 2 on there.
Okay.
It's gonna be about 5 minutes for lunch.
Okay.
Did I order? I didn't see your name on the, I didn't see your order.
Yeah.
Oh, I did?
It's invites.
Oh, bits and
I thought I got fish and chips.
For lunch.
Oh, I
Oh, I
ordered
thought-
same as
yeah, it
Kathy,
is in
bits
the-
and
Oh, okay,
pieces
that's
or
it.
whatever it was.
Bits and pieces. Kind of
I don't know what I'm having, Kathy.
You watch his face when it
So
comes.
Yeah, he's gonna
anyway,
be like,
did you
"Whoa."
say it's ready now?
Somebody's going to be trading
5
their
minutes,
fish and
okay.
chips
Yeah.
with them.
Calling the people's decision, law clerk,
All right.
what is there, anything we can feel there before lunch?
Yeah, it's just a quick motion if you guys just want to take a quick look at it. So
Is it
each
the
year the council's supposed to.
8B?
Yeah.
If you don't have the motion, I can hand it to you.
Okay.
Because did Jack have something about this?
Oh,
Location, I thought.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is it tight, or do you think-
No,
John.
he left his, if I do that.
John was gonna speak.
John was
to
gonna
it.
speak to it, yeah.
Okay.
John is
Legal
gonna watch.
rundown.
Didn't we decide that the People's Assembly would be at home?
So at the last council meeting, you guys had, we drafted a motion so that we can start the work
Uh-huh.
in the background, with knowing that it was gonna come back to this meeting to officially call the meeting.
Okay, what number are we on?
We're at People's Assembly.
B. There's a motion here. And the motion is as a motion regarding People's Assembly, whereas Executive Council must call at least one regular People's Assembly each calendar year. And B, citizens have expressed that they wish for the People's Assembly to be held in one location as opposed to linking satellite locations via teleconference. And C, Executive Council expressed desire to hold the 2019 People's Assembly at Hoyt Lands. Be it resolved that Executive Council hereby, one, calls the 2019 Annual Regular People's Assembly to be held October 19, 2019 in Anakla, BC. Is there a mover? Moved by Connie, second by Trevor. Discussion.
Robert, so I was asked by Jack Cook, who has a sore throat and is no longer here, to suggest that the People's Assembly be moved to a location that's more accessible, given what's happened with the bus accident and the logistics involved. So with that in mind, I thought it would be worthwhile to ask the question here and potentially suggest that we hold the meeting a bit later in a location which allows for rejigging in a place that is more accessible for citizens who may not now wish to actually travel the road, given the media coverage of the issue itself.
Okay, discussion. Any other discussion on the motion? I would ask if the mover and seconder is willing to consider John's suggestion or gathering.
I moved for that,
You move for what?
to have it in Nakla.
Okay. Oh, it's Connie. So, I mean, there isn't any appetite to unless there's, does anyone else want to speak to the motion? Ed?
Go ahead.
Jack, he came to me yesterday, said the same thing, and then he's saying, did he say something at the meeting? And I was like, yeah. I was like, and then he's like, oh, but the meeting's gonna be in town tomorrow. I was like, okay, maybe I'll just show up. So he was gonna come and say something, but then he wants to talk to you, and then it's
It was before you.
Oh, okay, yeah. And then, I think it's something, to think about, I think we should still have it at home, but then, there's obviously some some things to think about. I think, getting our citizens there safely,
Yeah.
talking about, when they're gonna be traveling, what day they're gonna show up. And, but yeah, I think that's, safety first. That's all I have to say.
Good thing. I think just to like, in actuality, wherever we hold the meeting, it's going to be just as unsafe for Anakwa citizens to travel from Anakwa to Port Alberni. So, you're saying, oh, let's consider these ones in Port Alberni or whatever, but we won't consider the ones in Anakwa. It's okay for them to travel the road. And it probably is too, because a lot of us are already working. But I think the reason for having the meeting at home was to connect our people to the homeland.
Yeah.
And, and it's just important that our people see what kind of conditions we got to live in. And I would suggest to deal with the safety issue, that we don't do what this particular operation did, was have their bus travel at night. We would have our people get there during the day, so that is that the bits and pieces, something like that? Okay. So anyway, that argument, I don't like us having that debate, that it's just the people from Anakla have to come this way. And the people from Port Alberni are going to have to go that way. So that shouldn't be a debate, because no matter where we have the meeting, that's a factor.
Yeah.
Corley?
So we did have a team meeting. The biggest thing that came out of that was who has priority over the rooms, because currently right now we do have every accommodation in Downfield secured, knowing that it could be in Downfield, in Anakla. So it was more so who gets priority over who, because we also have rooms secured here for citizens to make it from Vancouver, Nanaimo, Victoria, to stay here and then make their way down.
Yeah.
But it was more of a, if we're going to hold it down in Anakla, is it going to be 1 day or 2? If it's 1 day, we can make it work. If it's 2 days, who gets priority over what?
Well, it says October 19th. So
Yeah,
it's 1 day.
I just put it down for 1 day,
Yeah.
because based on if you look in the briefing note, the agenda is quite small.
Yeah.
And then, which we can do it in just 1 day.
Mhm.
But the next question would be, if you're wanting to hold, like we normally do, a culture night, are you wanting to hold the culture night on Friday? And if you want to hold it on Friday, where?
Oh, I see. Pig Station and Trevor?
I guess to go with what Robert was saying, I think it'd be good for us to keep them there another night, regardless if we're doing business or not. So we can get what we need to get done during the day, and there's no push to get out of there by a certain time to beat the day window, right? So we don't have anybody traveling at nighttime. So that'd be my only comment, is for do business in 1 day, keep our citizens there for overnight.
2 nights?
Yeah, and then so they can travel in the daytime the next day, and there's no rush, for them to get to here, because at the end of the day, if we keep them there just for the day, then they're going to be rushing to their destinations, because the destinations are not only the port.
Right.
Right.
But we know that not all citizens can, unfortunately, stay in Banfield. So it was more of a who has priority on the rooms, especially. Like, I know people can stay with family and stuff like that, but it was more of a, if we're going to put them in the rooms, who has that priority over who?
Just to add to that, so what we were thinking was people who are coming from outside of Port Alberni would just travel on Friday to Port Alberni, and then would travel up in the morning to Anakla, and then come back and stay in Port Alberni, and then move on to their next destination the next day. So we are planning on putting them up for 2 nights. It's just a matter of, do elders get priority to stay down in Anakla? What about staff who have to be there for multiple days and have to be there earlier than other people and later. So different things to consider, and not that I think executive council needs to figure out all that stuff, that's for us to do, but I think just some guidance on whether we want it to be a 1-day assembly, a 2-day assembly, and whether we want to have a culture night, and if we want to have culture night, one of the ideas I had was that we hold one in both Port Alberni and Annapolis concurrently at the same time, and maybe we can join the locations via camera so people can see each other and wave and enjoy that, but that's kind of the questions that we're looking for guidance.
Sure.
How many rooms do we have compared to what the allowable?
Phyllis,
Robert,
is there another bits and pieces coming?
What are
I didn't
our
see your
quorum
name
needs
on
are
it.
It was on
193.
beside Kathy's.
Oh,
There
okay.
was
What
two
did you
have a
large,
list of
what's
how
Kathy's
many
that one?
staff you actually need to have
television?
there?
No. what-
We,
Because all I
Wait,
understand
who's
is
Kathy?
the law clerk needs to be
She's
there
Kathy?
along with the.
This lady? Oh, the bits and bytes?
so-
Yeah.
but
Sorry, I
my
missed
question
it.
is, do you have the number?
I'll just be a second,
Of
Robert.
like how many units we have for accommodation, then how many people that there are altogether?
Not in total, but I can get that to council.
And I think that helps form direction of decision.
Yeah.
Is knowing how many accommodations there are, how many people we have.
So me and Robert found 17 lodges, hotels, and everything in that.
Yeah.
And 2 alone held like 40-something.
And then if we work with Trish, there's the taxi service thing that get us from the west side to the east side. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Tish, not Trish. Tish. So here's what I'm hearing. We'll accommodate 2 nights for hotel or accommodation. We'll have a 1-day assembly, and then we'll have cultural night in House of Hoyt on Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Okay, so with that in mind, if it's the will of council that it be in Annapolis, I would ask that we amend the decision to have a time where the assembly is over, and that it should be 5 p.m., because sundown is at 6:20. So that gives an hour and 20-ish minutes for people to leave in daylight if they so choose.
If they so choose, that's
Yeah.
good, yeah. Okay.
Is there a part of the strategy in the, I guess I know we used to do phone beats. Like,
Yep.
is that something that's gonna happen?
Yep.
Maybe that's a place where, like, what Trevor's talking about, like, what is the maximum amount of people that we can have at home? And
Yeah.
maybe just do a call out to find out, who wants to go down there and stay down there?
yeah,
Right? And as opposed to trying to, force one, generation over the other, like if it's just gonna be elders, because not all of them are gonna wanna go, so there's gonna be complications there. So I just wanted to suggest that maybe do a call out, do a phone bee, and just to say who all wants to go to the homelands. And
that'd be
put,
great, that's a great idea.
And through the communications department to use all avenues that we have out there to reach out to our citizens to find that answer.
Mhm.
I guess we take over this place basically, on People's Assembly.
Yeah.
How many rooms here?
40, 50? 50, I think.
I thought there was more than that.
Is there more?
I think it's 80-something.
Is
No,
it?
not that
There's
bad,
at least
No, it's
80.
not 80.
No,
No, I think there's only 5 or 4
yeah,
floors here.
4
So
floors.
I think it's 40 or,
I think it's about 40
Yeah.
or 50.
Yeah,
But we
Yeah.
also take over the hospitality inn and
Thai,
fine.
and some people at what's that other one?
the Minto.
So people will be staying here than going that way. Like, I think just the ones we have, I think, what did we say, 39 plus 13 plus 8 that we own.
Yeah.
That way, yeah.
And we've booked everything in Annapolis, so in Banfield.
Okay. So that'll be included in the motion then, that the meeting end by 5 p.m. Okay?
Followed by culture night.
Okay, are we having lunch now then? Appointment of speaker, let's do that.
Great.
So we're done. Is there a name for the,
So we have 2.
who?
Stephen Rayner has put his name forward to be a speaker. And Charlie just sent me an email not that long ago mentioning that he had approached Kit Spence to be a speaker, and he has agreed to put his name forward.
I like that.
Good idea.
Kit?
I'm
You
getting
want
ready.
to move Kit?
Good.
You move Kit?
Second.
Seconded. Moved by Trevor, seconded by John. And we appoint Kit Spence as the speaker.
That was an eyebrow raise agreement.
Speaker or acting speaker?
Okay, HR org chart, decision, Charlie Clappus, that'll be when he gets here. Okay. New business, lunch. I'll let you guys, unless you don't mind conducting business.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was like,
Reconvene at what time?
I was looking for,
We have it
12:30.
timed. I think
12:30?
at 12:30.
12:30.
I was looking for things on here.